So we are LAVA, and you see it is an acronym, Lees- en Adviesgroep Volwassenen met Autisme. So we've translated that on the next slide. And what it means is that we are a reading and advice group of adults with autism. We are basically active within Flanders, and you can see here who we are. We are adults with autism, mostly late diagnosis, just like Els and myself. We are very regular people. We are partners, parents. Sorry, I was muted. So I unmuted myself. So you see maybe something which is specific to us in this group is that we all have an academic education. And that I think you need to tie to something which is a very important concept at the bottom of the slide. We don't, in line with what Femke said in the presentation previous, we really want to be a voice, a direct, positive autistic voice, but a voice. We do not claim to speak for everybody or to speak as if we know everybody, as we know everything about autism or every autistic experience. But we do think that given our background that we have a specific way of linking to autism research and autism researchers. You see there also in the picture, and then I'll give it to Els for the next slides. You see in the picture what lava is. I think that's internationally so. It is associated to volcanoes, and Karen, who is one of our founding members, took like this picture to come up with the name to show that basically we all had a life where something was boiling beneath the surface, and in our case, in a very positive way, ultimately, with a lot of problems before we got there, that translated into being able to get a totally new life. In my case, switching from an engineer to a philosopher, and in Els's case, switching from an economist and civil servant to an autism coach and entrepreneur. So I'll give it to Els for the next slide to explain first how we started. Then we'll go to what we did, and then I'll end with our key messages. Els, up to you.
Thank you, Jo. Hi, everybody. So, when did it all start for LAVA? Well, it was in the beginning of 2019, when we started as a reading group of about 10 autistic adults coming together to discuss autism research. And the first paper we discussed was an article of Liz Pellicano about what should autism research focus upon. More details about this article you'll find in our last slide of this presentation. So, but after a few sessions as a reading group, we came to the conclusion that we had to add the word advice to our mission and to be more than a reading group, but also be an advisory group. So we agreed on our mission and vision statement, which you can find on our website. We set out priorities for autism research, and what is important also, we affiliated to the Leuven Autism Research Group, so the LARES group from where researchers from KU Leuven and from other universities in Belgium, but mostly KU Leuven or KU Leuven, but the different faculties are represented in LARES. So a bit more into detail about our mission. So this mission is to build a constructive dialogue with autism researchers. Just like you said, giving an additional voice to autism. We, being autistic adults, want to bring a positive message, so not only focusing on the tip of the iceberg, but also showing what is underneath the water surface. A lot of opportunities, refreshing ideas, a lot of possibilities. So that's what we want to show, want to prove maybe, but show. And last but not least, we see it as our mission to change the public's perception on autism, so the image autism has in the broader public. Our vision, so how to achieve our mission, is first of all, we will proceed reading and critically reading autism research articles. We will reflect, secondly, on advice and priorities in autism research. We will thirdly adjust opinions and perceptions in the media, like I said, by writing our own opinion articles, for instance. And we will always, but you're stressed upon it, we will always participate as one of the voices, so not the, we will never be the autistic voice. So, in other words, we want to give autism a direct voice in both scientific and public debate, and we want to show our innate uniqueness, which is also an enrichment. Next slide. I said in the former slide that we stressed, that we stated our autism research priorities. So it's in we have three important priorities. So we concluded to three important priorities. The first one is that there has to be research on the impact for autistic people in the long term. So the pressure and the suffering of autistic people due to camouflaging and compensating is one of that aspects that has to be there needs to be more research on, and we want to shift the focus from causes of autism to living with autism. Secondly, we think that longitudinal socio-economic research is needed, or is more needed. And in that research, not only focusing on what goes wrong, but also learning from good experience, from things that went well in the lives of autistic people. And the third important issue in research for us is that there is our suggestion that there needs to be a state-of-the-art inventory of relevant current autism research. So because by knowing what gets funded, which research projects having funding, we can also influence the priorities in that funding, in that research. So we prefer to contribute to participative autism research. And what exactly is meant by participative or participatory autism research, you can find in an article of Sue Fletcher-Watson. This article also is added to our last slides of this presentation, which will be distributed after the AutMinds seminars. So we started in 2017, and during the last years we are gaining cruising altitude. How did we do that? First of all, by establishing a website, by admitting new members. We have 40 members for the moment, and installing a core organizing group. In 2019, we started with organizing member days. So we were physically, in that time, present in a meeting where we invited a speaker, which was always an autism researcher. We were 10 to 15 members, and our conclusions and our actions, there was always in each member day, there's always a conclusion or a call for action or something, a result which we present to the broader public or to the people who has to know the results. So at the beginning of 2020, the world changed a bit, and also the way we are working. So since then, we are organizing corona-proof online reading sessions. Each session is with 12 members. We have a discussion by Zoom on a topic that is always introduced by an autism researcher, and followed by a discussion of the members, and the conclusion, which is sent to the broader public, mostly on our website, of course, our LinkedIn page, and which we always make public. Another aspect of of LAVA is our participation in research activities in general, and some selected speaking opportunities. A bit more about our growth. I said we are 40 members today. As you can see in the graph here, we started rather slowly. We build our basis, let's say, and beginning of this year, with the online reading sessions and our media campaign, let's say, our results that we have been broadened to the public, you see more people knowing about LAVA and getting interested to be a member. Also on LinkedIn, you see it goes very quickly, because nowadays we have almost, I think, 265 members or something. So we started the page in May, so it's go very quickly. So that's about our the start and our growing. Now a bit about what we achieved in those years. First of all, we are very active in participating in the Flanders Academic Workplace Autism. The Academic Workplace Autism is a practice-oriented research aiming to ensure better participation of autistic people in our society. So it is funded by the Flemish government. Flemish researchers from the universities of Leuven and Ghent are taking the lead in it. And LAVA is represented in the steering committee as the representative for the autism community, and in one expert panel. I'm sorry. The timing of the workplace, the academic workplace, it started in 2018 with a call for proposals and the selection of 6 proposals, 6 projects out of 42 candidates. Projects came in 4 domains: the image, the representation of autistic people. Second domain was the early intervention. Third, the transition periods in life of autistic people. And fourth, domain was the mental health. So now, in this year, projects are elaborated, research is done, and evaluation is to come. There's a bit of a delay due to COVID-19, but by June 2021, implementation of those 6 projects is foreseen. So implementation on a broader scale than only on the small project scale, but projects will be implemented in several places. So this is one round of academic workplace. If there will be budget and the government will still keep funding, I suppose the second round will come. People who want to know more about this workplace are welcome to visit the link, the website, which you can find by the link here. Over here. So I give the word back to Jo, who will talk to you about some other things we did in the last years. Jo? Someone hearing Jo?
Okay, thank you, Els. Thank you for unmuting me, because to my surprise, I couldn't unmute myself. So, Els already gave one achievement. I want to go to what we typically do, which is talk about autism research amongst ourselves. And I have a couple of slides. I don't know whether I will go through all of them, but the slides will be distributed and you can all get to the links which are there. So I'll give a number of examples and then you can see what we actually do and to make it as concrete as possible. So our first member day, we had a researcher who is actually also a medical doctor and a child psychiatrist in becoming, Gert-Jan van Aken, who helped us in an ethical reflection on a project which has been going on in Flanders, which is the Tracking Infants at Risk for Autism project. As you see, it is a project about early detection and intervention, and Gert-Jan basically discussed with us a number of frameworks whether or not such early detection or intervention was beneficial or not. So you see here that what we basically in our discussion came with is that we objected to the at-risk terminology in the project's name, because we thought it suggested that autism would be something to be avoided or fought against. And we concluded and we discussed, as you see in the timing with the project group, that we believe that early detection intervention could be helpful, but not to battle autism, but mainly to prevent problems which could be happening with a link to autism or for whatever other reasons in childhood. So we also told them that the idea of necessarily labeling children very early on as autistic was not necessarily helpful, that in something which is an ethical term, that we should have always respect for an open future, so we should not label too quickly. Labeling, we told them, is not what we need. What we need is prevention of problems in let's say, children growing up together with their parents. So Els, if you can go to the next slide. Our next member day was with a totally different topic, and I think that's important here to show that we really have very different topics that we discuss, and that was on the autistic brain. So we invited a cognitive scientist or a neuroscientist, a psychologist, Dr. Sander van der Kruijs, who meanwhile has become my friend. And without going too much in detail, he has coined a theory which maybe some people heard about, the PEA theory, which basically says that autism is something which is an atypical way of perceiving the world. So it's not something to do with social issues or whatever, which are the stereotypes that Femke also discussed, but it has to do with basically perceiving the world in an atypical way, a way that is different from most people. So Sander introduced that topic, and then we discussed that topic, and we actually agreed with Sander. The group basically had a very spontaneous agreement that saying that perceiving things differently, actually that is the cause, not as, for instance, theory of mind says that the cause is, let's say, having social difficulties. So we agreed that autistic perception tends to be more precise and therefore more sensitive. And we even discussed how this diversity really can contribute to a better society, something that clearly people sense a lot. We actually, Sander and I, wrote an article where we basically discussed the reception of his theory in the LAVA group. And that is recently published in September in het wetenschappelijk tijdschrift Autisme. And you can see, you can download that article if you click on the link on this page. The article is in Dutch, as are most links in this presentation, except for the ones that I will highlight. So if else goes to the next slide, I will briefly go to something we do as well, to my link with as a philosopher and as a researcher, specifically working also with Professor Christine Hens, which was mentioned by Femke, and whom I think in the Dutch-speaking and also in the English-speaking research world, we really have to credit for the things she has done to get the autistic voice really heard in research. So the study days are basically, you see here that in 2019 it was physical. In 2020 we had to move from a physical to a virtual workshop, just like AutMinds did. And you see here that there are always three researchers, autism researchers, which make a presentation. There is always one who has the background of also being autistic. And I will not go too much into details. You have here the presentation for the links. Because the one of 2020 was virtual, it was also recorded, and you can go to the presentations of Jana, Robert, and myself on the internet. So they are in the Neuroepigenetics project YouTube channel. You see on the right the people who were there. Well, a snapshot, because we were not that big as AutMinds, but we were on average between 50 and 60 people. Next slide, please, Els. So this is what we had to do. So we had our member days, which went really well. And then we were, like the rest of the world, a little bit looking for how to do things in the COVID reality. And we invented this, well, Els invented this online reading session. And basically the principle is a little bit the same, but it is more condensed. In the sense that we read an article, a paper that is published on autism, and there is always an academic that introduces it. In this case, Professor Ilse Noens, who also cannot be credited enough for her way of introducing us at SLAVA specifically to the research community, but also for listening very actively to the autistic voice. And this specific one, which was the one in May, we discussed the article which you see there, having all of your internal resources exhausted beyond measure and being left with no cleanup crew. So this is an article which was specifically published on autistic burnout. And we discussed that, and I think there was a large agreement in the LAVA members that the way it was described there on qualitative research, meaning that it was based on what autistics themselves said about their burnout experience, is that autistic burnout is very specific and needs specific care. So you cannot just, as from healthcare point of view, say, well, it's all burnout. No, there is something very different to autistic burnout, which is, let's say, the accumulation of keeping up appearances. And this is something, and you will see that in the two links that are mentioned on the screen. This is something where we published mainly on LinkedIn a number of reflections based on that member discussion, trying to argue, and this is something we should do much more, that clinical professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, should really recognize autistic burnout for what it is, so that they could come up more naturally with maybe an autism diagnosis or presupposition, which then basically leads to a much better outcome for the people than if they are treated like in a typical burnout case. Next slide, Els. So here we come more or less to one of the last activities that we did, which was, she was named already a couple of times, and she is my promoter also in my PhD project, Professor Christine Hens, with a book that was mentioned by Femken as well. And we read the paper with her, which is also noted here, which she has written together with Leni van Goitsenhoven, who is one of my colleagues. Seeing, let's say, autism as a dynamic and a multi-layered phenomenon. So this is very far away from the typical reductionist neuroscience, let's say, which is maybe best and worst exemplified by theory of mind. And it really tries to go into heterogeneity of autism, different ways of presenting autism, not just over different autistic people, but also throughout life. And we discussed that, and also there we were very appreciative of the dynamical, or the members were very appreciative of the dynamics, seeing in their own life stories, let's say, a lot of examples where maybe also autism coaches kind of prejudged whatever they were going through as being the stereotype this or stereotype that, where obviously we're all one and unique, and our autism, let's say, is combined with a lot of other experiences that we have. So even if autism has some underlying commonality, then if you are treated, then it should certainly be something that is done from in a dynamic way. So looking at the person and not taking into account autism, but not looking at the person through the lens only of autism. That does not work. You see a link here also in Dutch where Christine, let's say, does an introduction to this concept for those who don't want to read the articles, and where she also makes the link with epigenetic research that is, let's say, a more nuanced way than the typical genetic, you were born autistic and you cannot do this and you cannot do that. So I will not spend too much time on this to leave enough time to conclude. So Els,
yes, you are having a few more minutes, so I hope you can go to the conclusion of your talk. You have like less than 5 minutes.
All right, just...
Then I go to the discussion.
Okay, just saying that we did contribute to panel debates. More important is what next. So this month in October, we are very pleased that Dr. Jeroen de Winter, who's present here, and he's He's working for the University of Tilburg in the Netherlands, and to the University of Leuven in Belgium. He's introducing our next reading session, so I'm sure you will read good conclusions on our LinkedIn page and on our website at the beginning of November. Also, the November reading session we already planned, and it will be about multicultural diversity and autism. We have already a few themes that we are working on for 2021. I'm not going, you can read what's in the slides when you have the slides, that it will be on accessibility, about non-speaking autism and what we can learn from non-speaking people with autism. And we will broaden our multicultural project too. What's our challenge? Our challenge now.
You have 1 minute left.
Oh, maintain cruising speed. So we have a few questions. How do we cope with increasing members? How to get funding? So we want to keep the small scale, but are willing to grow. This one is for you. If someone.
Yeah, so I'll just conclude that basically we think we are unique, and that's also why we wanted to present here. And you can read all of these elements. If you go to the last slide, I think, else then I really conclude. Again, our uniqueness, which is basically, I think this is important, and this is also the call to action, that we engage with autism research. We really directly do that, but we do not have we are not all autism researchers, so we are, to quote unquote, autistics next door. And this is something, a model of organizing that we hope in the Netherlands and in other countries, that this LAVA can be an example of this type of organizing, a voice where we really engage with autism research directly and autism researchers, and on the other hand, still maintain, let's say, openness for people just like you and me, who are interested in research, but who are not necessarily full-time involved in autism research. So that is basically the conclusion, Karen. Sorry.
Okay, yes.